Now you're wearing something you didn't need to survive. A ring. A necklace. Painted nails. A tattoo. Even just the specific shirt you picked this morning instead of any other shirt in your closet. None of it keeps you warm or fed. And yet you probably spent real time and real money choosing it anyway. Here's the reframe. Decorating the body isn't some modern vanity project. It might be one of the oldest deliberate behaviors humans do, older than farming, older than permanent shelter, older than most of what we consider civilization. The question is, why did a species fighting to survive ever bother decorating itself at all? Let's go back to the beginning, and the beginning is older than you'd think possible. In 2004, researchers working in Blombos Cave on the South African coast uncovered a set of small perforated shells, deliberately pierced, stained with red ochre and strung together. The dating placed them at roughly 75,000 years old. Not decoration as an afterthought. Decoration as one of the earliest recorded acts of symbolic thought our species ever left behind. Think about that. Before writing. Before agriculture. Before anything we'd call a city. Humans were already punching holes in shells to wear them. But here's the thing. Survival doesn't have room for wasted effort. Every hour spent piercing a shell was an hour not spent hunting, gathering, or resting. So whatever this was doing for early humans, it had to be worth the cost. The shells themselves came from a small sea snail called Necerius krausianus, gathered from a nearby estuary and carried back to camp. Researchers examining the beads under microscopes found where patterns consistent with prolonged rubbing against string, skin, and clothing, meaning these weren't buried as offerings. They were worn repeatedly over real stretches of time by real people going about real lives. Around the same period, archaeologists start finding something even stranger. Chunks of red ochre, some scored with deliberate crosshatch patterns, others ground down like a cosmetic. Sites like Pinnacle Point in South Africa show ochre use going back over 160,000 years, long before Blombos, long before those shell beads. That's not paint for a wall. That's paint for a body. Here's what makes this so important. If early humans were marking their own skin with pigment 160,000 years ago, it means self-decoration isn't a byproduct of civilization. It might be one of the things that helped build civilization in the first place. Here's why. Anthropologists studying these finds point to one major function: identity. A patch of red ochre on your skin, a specific shell around your neck, wasn't random. It told everyone looking at you something. Which group you belong to. Your status within it. Maybe whether you were ready to marry, mourning a loss, or heading into a ritual. In a world with no written language, your was the only billboard you had. That's a walking, talking ID card made of shell and dirt. Fast forward tens of thousands of years, and the evidence explodes. At sites in Russia dated to around 30,000 years ago, archaeologists found burials at Sungur, containing bodies covered in thousands of tiny ivory beads, painstakingly carved, one at a time, likely sewn directly onto clothing. Researchers estimate each bead could have taken over an hour to make by hand. One burial alone contained roughly 3,500 of them. That's thousands of hours of labor, buried with a single person for decoration alone. And it wasn't just beads. The Sungur burials also included mammoth ivory bracelets, carved pendants, and even a set of ivory spears too long and fragile to have ever been functional weapons, suggesting they were made purely as ceremonial grave goods. Whoever this community was, they were willing to pour enormous collective effort into how a single body looked on its way into the ground. But here's the problem this raises. Why pour that much time into something that offers zero nutritional or physical survival benefit? The answer researchers keep landing on is social. Groups that could organize enough to produce that much ornamentation were groups with structure, cooperation, and shared belief systems strong enough to hold together. The decoration wasn't separate from survival. It was evidence the group had survival figured out well enough to spend time on something else entirely. Think about that the next time someone calls jewelry frivolous. Around 5,000 years ago, tattooing enters the archaeological record with undeniable proof. Otzi the Iceman, discovered frozen in the Alps in 1991, carries 61 tattoos across his body, mostly simple lines and crosses positioned near his joints. Researchers now believe these weren't decorative in the way we'd assume. They line up almost exactly with areas of joint degeneration, suggesting they may have functioned as a form of ancient pain treatment, a kind of prehistoric acupuncture marked permanently into the skin. So even body art we assume was purely aesthetic sometimes doubled as medicine. Here's the pivot though, because decoration didn't stay practical for long. By the time you reach ancient Egypt, around 3000 BCE, body adornment becomes deeply tied to religion and power. Kohl eyeliner wasn't just style. Egyptians believed it protected the eyes from the sun and warded off evil, while simultaneously marking status. Gold jewelry wasn't just wealth on display. It was believed to carry protective and even divine properties, connecting the wearer to the gods themselves. Decoration had officially become a language of power, not just identity. Even the color of the coal carried meaning. Black coal, made from ground galena, was used daily by nearly everyone regardless of class, but green malachite eyeliner, reserved largely for the wealthy and for religious ceremony, was linked directly to Horus and rebirth. Tomb paintings show pharaohs and commoners alike outlined in thick black lines, a single cosmetic habit stretching across the entire social ladder, worn by everyone but meaning something slightly different depending on who wore it. That shift never reversed. It just kept escalating. Across cultures, from Polynesian tattoo traditions marking lineage and achievement, to Maori moko carved into the skin as a permanent record of ancestry, to Victorian mourning jewelry woven from a dead loved one's hair, humans kept finding new reasons to alter their bodies on purpose. Status, grief, religion, rebellion. Every single motive humans have ever had eventually got written onto skin. And this brings us to something researchers find genuinely fascinating. The impulse never went away. It just changed materials. A 2021 study on adornment behavior found that the psychological drivers behind ancient body decoration, group belonging, individual identity, status signaling, map almost exactly onto why people get piercings, dye their hair, or choose specific clothing brands today. Different tools. Same underlying wiring. That's 75,000 years of unbroken behavior, still running in your closet this morning. Think about how specific that wiring still is. The same study found that people consistently judge strangers' trustworthiness, wealth, and even personality within seconds, based almost entirely on visible adornment choices, clothing style, jewelry, grooming. We like to believe we're more evolved than a shell necklace signaling status on a beach 75,000 years ago. Mostly we've just swapped the shell for a watch. So here's the full picture. It starts with a handful of pierced shells on a South African coastline, deliberately strung together for no survival reason at all. It shows up as ochre ground into pigment and pressed onto skin over 160,000 years ago. It explodes into thousands of hand-carved beads buried with a single person in Ice Age Russia. It becomes medicine on the frozen skin of a man in the Alps. It becomes religion in Egypt, lineage in Polynesia, grief in Victorian England, and by the time it reaches you, it's a ring you put on without thinking twice. That shirt you picked this morning? It's connected to shell beads on an ancient coastline, sacred coal in Egyptian tombs, and thousands of hours of Ice Age labor, all compressed into a decision that took you about 10 seconds. Here's what makes it important. Humans have never just been trying to survive. From nearly the beginning, we've been trying to be seen, to say something about who we are without opening our mouths. If you've ever wondered why getting dressed can feel like more than just getting dressed, now you know it's not just in your head. It's a habit older than language itself, and you're still speaking it every single day. If this changed the way you look at what you're wearing right now, you know what to do with that.